Welcome back to the She Runs Strong podcast with me, Nikki Friedman and Shona Hendricks. Today, we are going to do a deep dive into tempo threshold running. What's the difference between the two, how to use them, and if you're an endurance runner, why you should be doing these runs. But firstly, Shona, how are you doing? How is training? And I suppose, are you doing some tempo running, or should we talk about that later?
No, I think it's a good question. Thanks, Nikki. I'm doing well. In the thick of marathon training as it goes. I'm enjoying it. It's nice to have some routine again and some just consistency, which is I'm tired, but you start feeling good again, and that's
Yep.
good. And interestingly though, I've adapted my training a little bit. I do a little bit of threshold running, but I've changed a bit. And I know we're not talking about intervals today, and maybe we'll touch on it later. But I've started playing a little bit of ultimate frisbee.
Oh, really?
Which is really a big change. My boyfriend plays, and he's kind of
Goodness.
dragged me in, and so and coming from a hockey and soccer background, the movement on the field is quite similar, and so I've almost replaced my intervals with that. So I'm just, because obviously there's a lot of acceleration and deceleration in ultimate frisbee. And so I'm not doing intervals specifically. I'm doing some threshold work still, and obviously we'll talk about it. But yeah, because I thought, well, I didn't think I know that if I do that plus my intervals, it's just going to be too much
Way too
loading.
much.
But
What
um,
ultimate frisbee is it a team sport then? Do you have
yeah,
teams?
team sports, seven on the pitch at a time, and and it's almost, think of it like American football, almost like, but with a frisbee. So you got to
Right.
move the disc around the field and get it into an end zone to score a point. And so lots of cutting, lots of moving. When I started playing, I was actually a bit nervous because I haven't played
Yes.
soccer or something like that in about 7 or 8 years,
Uh-huh.
and I've been running in a straight line, and I thought I don't want to tear an ACL or pull a hamstring or something.
Yeah.
I've been really trying to just so it entered into it a little bit, and hence why I've taken my intervals out of my runs,
Oof. I
just
think
to rather have that. Yeah.
if I was your run coach, I would be sweating a little bit, I think, with that. I
I'm
would be going,
sweating a
"Oh,
little
God."
bit about it as well. I finished the one session earlier than expected because I was getting really tired.
Yes.
And I thought, okay, well, I know as a sports scientist that if you fatigue, this is where injuries happen. So I said, sorry guys, I'm gonna like step out. I'm not being lazy. I'm just, you guys are all 20 and I'm 40 and I don't want to get injured. So but it's been good, Nikki. The first session I had, I know we don't really read into our Garmins and stuff, but
Mm,
the Garmin obviously said I was overtraining or overreaching. But I could feel that I was so stiff because it's just stuff
oh,
that we, that
yes,
because you're running at maximum, and we don't often run at maximum in our
yes.
training, in our running sessions, and so, so I was very stiff for at least 3 days
Oh,
afterwards.
God.
But yeah, it's gotten better since, and I'm finding it, it's just nice to do something a bit different. But again, yes, we're not talking about ultimate frisbee here on today, but again, just something different and still high intensity. But today, obviously, we're going to dive into some threshold and tempo sessions because we do always get the questions about this, and how to implement it in your plan and why it's so important. But Nikki, you like these sessions. I know you,
Yes.
you use them quite
Yeah.
well, right?
Yeah.
In your training plans. Yeah.
Yeah, they're just key, aren't they? So
Mm.
we're going to break down a little bit of the different sessions and threshold and tempo sessions. Sometimes people use those terms sort of interchangeably, but they're not strictly the same. So firstly, I think we'll go through a little bit of definition of what the difference is between a threshold session and a tempo session, and we'll break down a wee bit of how you can use them and what they are good for. So if we look at threshold sessions to start with, and so the scientific, the technical bit of this is that you would be running just below your lactate threshold, and we might need to come back to that. But that's the effort where the lactate starts to accumulate in your body faster than your body can clear it, okay? And then that will happen really quite quickly at a set point, set turning point. So a threshold run is oftenly termed as a comfortably hard run. So if you ever hear coaches talking about you want to run comfortably hard, which seems a strange term to kind of use, that's what we're talking about. So probably about between maybe a 6 to 8 out of 10 effort, I
Yes.
think we're
Yes.
looking about that. Often about close to your hour kind of race pace. So for a lot of our runners, that might be a 10K or
Yes.
even up to about a 10 mile. I did laugh when I was researching this actually. It was sort of, it had 10 mile to half marathon, and I was like, oof.
Wow. Yeah,
There's-
those are for the very fast,
yeah, yeah.
the
So
people
most
who are
people, it's
running.
probably about your 10K.
Exactly. We're not world record holders for half marathon running at 60 minutes, So yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's more along the lines of a 10K. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a tough effort, really. But still, you can throw out a few words as you're going. You're not redlining it, as they
Mm,
say. Um,
but you're working hard.
you're working hard.
Yes. Yes. Yeah,
Um,
I think. Sorry. Finish, Nikki. Go ahead.
yeah, so I mean, that's the thing. You're working hard.
Mm.
It's a comfortably hard effort.
Nikki, it's so interesting. You speak around an hour, and yes, we're not these elite half marathoners who are running a half marathon in 60 minutes. So obviously,
No.
there's going to be a difference between different abilities. And I think the interesting thing about because now at Coach Perry, anyways, and I know a lot of other coaches perhaps use this, they regard threshold as a hard effort between 30 to perhaps 40 minutes. And that essentially stems from the fact that not many people can sustain a true threshold for an hour. So
Yeah,
if we
yeah,
were looking to really get an idea of what someone's threshold is, I mean, imagine if I say, if we go say to people, go and run as hard as you can for an hour, there's going to be so much variance in what they can do. Test one,
yeah,
test two, test three will be different. And so they did develop that over time to then sort of bring down and say, okay, 30 to 40 minutes. I mean, that's why it's for the concept of threshold on a bike anyways. We have the 20-minute forced threshold power test.
yeah.
And because we've narrowed it down, I mean, I know they've taken that so far on the bike on the Watt bikes anyways, you can do a 3-minute threshold test, which
Oh,
I
wow.
then find isn't as accurate, so obviously we need to find that balance between
Yeah,
we don't want to go too long where people will fatigue, but so we use 30 to 40 minutes and that's essentially the effort or the intensity where you're running like at that comfortably hard sustained effort. I quite like that word when we're talking about threshold. It's something that you should be able to sustain. It's something you should be able to keep
yeah.
doing for that amount of time. But
It's
yeah,
quite hard, isn't it? So that would be like your 5 or your 10K really for a lot of our listeners out there. So yeah,
absolutely.
that's
Yeah.
good. So that gives you a rough idea. So a sort of 7 to 8 out of 10 or
Yeah.
6 to 8 out of 10 in that sort of range, really.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so and I mean, it's about training your body, but the purpose of this is if you're doing this type of training, a threshold session, is to allow your body to start and learn and tolerate and just get used to that level of
Mm,
exertion. Because
mm,
when you're new to running, you quite often just you're it I know a lot of our runners, certainly new to running, tend to run slightly too fast, but actually when you're learning to run a threshold session, that is something you need to learn to kind of enjoy that level of discomfort a little bit as you train. So the purpose here is to sort of teach yourself mentally how to run at that harder level and also to help clear the lactate more efficiently. So
yeah.
so you can hold the faster paces for longer without getting fatigued. Sorry, go on.
No, 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 no. I'm sorry. I have a little
I
pet
get
peeve
your
there.
pet peeve, haven't
Yeah,
I? Yes.
but your point is right. Is to be able to hold those longer intensities for longer.
Yes,
You mentioned the word lactate, and
I
I just
know.
have to, it's like it just triggers
I know.
something in me because people do think so. Now you even just you defined that. You said it. It's training your body to tolerate and clear lactate more efficiently. I mean, we said that at the beginning, and so just a note here for people listening is that lactate is not the baddie that everyone makes it out. It's not the bad guy that everyone makes it out to be, right? So lactic acid and that feeling of hitting a wall, that's not lactic acid. That's not the reason we fatigue. In actual fact, lactate, when we're pushing towards that, yes, we do have a buildup of lactate in the cells, but we also have a buildup of other metabolites, in particular hydrogen ions. So there's a breakdown of different energies, things, and hydrogen ions then become left in the cell, and that's what causes that fatigue. But the cell becomes, or what we want to get from training is we want the cell to become very efficient at getting rid of those waste products,
Yeah,
firstly. So that's the one thing that's really important with these sessions. And the second thing is that lactate is actually, we got to start seeing it as a good guy. It's no longer the kryptonite, it's actually the Superman. It's
yeah,
the taking lactate can be reused in the cell. goes back into the cell and is reused as an energy source. And so the more we work with these threshold sessions, the more efficient we can become at pushing that line and perhaps at reutilizing lactate more effectively. So just a little note there, and we will do a deep dive on lactic acid at some point, I'm sure, because it's not the baddie that everyone makes it out to be, and lactate itself is actually it gets reused in the cell as an energy source. And what we see when we do this in a lab, just very quickly, is that the graph will flow along quite nicely at sort of steady state sessions. You're moving along quite nicely, and then all of a sudden, and you mentioned it earlier, there's this curve or this influx, and that is where the lactate is becoming more is being produced than was being removed, essentially. And so we do want to do these sessions in and around that area or that zone, which is normally in and around a zone 4-ish, where we then are training the body to utilize that or get rid of the bad byproducts and to reutilize lactate quite effectively. And we actually call that the lactate. I always get this wrong. Lactate shuttle. I always want to say lactate shuffle. I don't know why. It's like we're dancing with our lactate.
Cool.
And it's a physiological concept that the lactate gets taken back and to be reused in the cell as a form of energy, which is excellent. But it's just really key here. And I know we'll touch on this again a little bit later, and we always carry on about this, that you have to start with a good aerobic base first. So within this lactate shuttle, I said it right. So within this lactate shuttle, if you don't have a good base, think of the shuttle, the bus that's taking that lactate back to the beginning of the cell. That is your aerobic capacity. And if you don't have a big aerobic capacity, you get less people on the bus. Essentially, you get less lactate on the bus to go back to the beginning. And so we always have to make sure we have a good base before we start doing these sessions. So don't just jump into it, but we'll get into the whys and hows in a bit. But I just wanted to touch on the physiology there a little bit because people just confuse those concepts.
That's really helpful, actually, just to get that sort of nailed down and stuff. And you've hit the next point that I was going to do is when you would use these, and you've just sort of explained that very clearly there, that you would use it in the mid phase of training blocks, really, once you have built your lovely aerobic base, which is the key to everything that we bang on about all the time. So, but it does help improve stamina, and it just pushes that lactate threshold point up. And that's what we're looking for, is to move that curve along the graph a little bit so you can hold on to faster paces for longer. So I've got written down here that often helps in sort of 10K to half marathon training predominantly, but probably in 5Ks, depending on where your 5K level is as well, really. So it's good for any of those distances, really. And it's a key kind of workout, really.
I mean, I like them for marathon training as well, because you are working. I mean, no one was really running there unless you're very well trained running their marathon, at that intent. So it is good to push through those sorts of threshold areas so that you can, when you're running for long periods of time, to be able to do that. So I mean, but yes, I agree, definitely 10K to half marathon training.
I mean, we're going to touch on tempos, and I would more use the sort of tempo types, but just to give some examples of a threshold session, and you wouldn't want to go, because threshold sessions are pretty hard sessions, and if you're putting them in your plan, you don't want to go too mad with them. I keep harping on about this, less is still more with these sessions. You want to practice it, but you don't want to take yourself over the edge. So some nice sessions would be something like a 5x4 minute at threshold pace with 2 to 3 minutes jogging recovery. So nice, easy jogging recoveries there. And that just gets you in that zone a little bit. Then you can progress that on a wee bit and build up the time. But I wouldn't go much longer than 20 to 30 minutes of threshold working, depending on what level of athlete or runner you are. And certainly if you're a beginner, definitely less is more. Just start off quite easy, because there is quite a big cost to your body when you do threshold and just how you feel. So you want to sort of ease into it a little bit. I think it might be quite good just to go into what tempos are, and then we can discuss a little bit more in terms of the differences and what works.
And more examples. Definitely. So
the tempo is a kind of different. So the it's a much broader term, and
Mm.
different coaches, I think, can use it slightly differently. This is one of my favorite terms that I use quite a lot. And when I talk about tempo, I'm really talking anything from about marathon pace up to threshold pace. So it's quite a big, I'm using my hands here quite a lot, but it's quite a big block really of training. So for people who are doing sort of ultras and marathons,
Yes.
I would do a lot of maybe marathon miles or even steady state miles, as opposed to going right up to threshold. And I would count that as a tempo, albeit lighter tempos. And so it really overlaps into the threshold
Mm.
sort of state. So I've written down here as well, it's often where our beginners start. When you start to running, you're often running, and we talk about this all the time, that you're running a little bit too fast all the time.
Yes.
This is often where beginners start, and they find running quite hard because they're just running that little bit too fast all the time.
Mm.
And this is your sort of, but it's still quite an aerobic zone, so they're feeling kind of good, but they're running a little bit fast, and this is where we're at. So we want to just take that back. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry, Nick. Let me just reiterate there. I think that's a key thing. You know, this is why we harp on around. You know, just so I can reiterate what Nikki's saying. Run your easy runs easy enough. You know, we're not telling everyone to run that we only want you to run slow. That's not what we're saying. We're not saying that we only want you to run easy all the time. We want you to run easy so that you can do those tempo and other runs hard. Because what we, like you say, is we find that everyone just sort of sits also probably in this gray zone. So then they're not doing either of those effectively. So yeah, the beginner runners really do make that mistake. And as you become a little bit more rehearsed and trained in this, you really see the difference. And you can feel that difference very, very clearly.
Yeah. And I think that's it. It's like
Mm.
there's a lot of chat about zone 2, and your easy runs really would be at the lower end of zone 2, and then your tempos, light tempos, would be at the upper end of your zone 2, going up into your zone 3, up to your threshold pace. So, you know, your classic tempo. So your classic tempo, what people have always thought about was your kind of threshold pace, the comfortably
Yes.
hard. Your marathon tempo is your marathon pace miles. It requires a degree more of control and just being more pace driven, I guess, at this particular point when you're practicing for a marathon. But it's still very aerobic, and it still can be structured very similar to your tempos, and should actually feel quite an easy session if your aerobic base is solid and you're in the middle of your plan towards a marathon. So
But
it
that's Nikki, sorry, can I ask you? You say that's for you is slightly easier than your threshold, correct? If you want to recover from sessions faster, not feel tired all the time, run pain and injury free, and improve your endurance, then be sure to join me in my upcoming training specifically for female runners over the age of 45. In it, I'll share with you my simple 5-step framework that will transform your running. Simply scan the QR code on screen now or click on the link in the description to save your seats in the training now. We look forward to seeing you there.
Yes.
Just so that everyone's understanding that, just so where they can have it in their head, is that these
Yes, I
marathon
mean, it's quite
pace, it'll be slightly easier than the threshold pace.
it's quite an easy, I mean, it's interesting. I've just started these track sessions, because a lot of my kind of runners in my local area are working towards marathons in October. And I thought, well, I'll start these marathon sessions or tempo marathon pace sessions at a track. So normally I only ever kind of do intervals and fast paced work. And I didn't think it would sort of take hold a little bit. But the beauty of doing these sessions at a track is that actually most people can chat at that light tempo session.
Yes.
So they come along to run their marathon miles. And I still do, like last week was 2 times 16 minutes. And then we did a sort of 5 minutes faster to finish off. But so it's not that much work, 2 times 16, 32 minutes of work. They were able to chat to their friends. They went away thinking that actually felt like quite an easy session, not what you expect when you're on track, but it was about
Yes.
the degree of control,
Control.
locking into your pace, making sure you don't go too fast, but you still get a training benefit, a training stimulus from that, which is going to build your aerobic strength. It's also going to build a mental sort of focus. You're going to really dial into your marathon pace or your half marathon pace. And it's just, yeah, it's going to work really nicely for you. It just helps lock into that race day rhythm, I suppose, which is why it's such a good session.
Yeah.
Um,
When do you, when will you use this in your training? Like, in which sort of block in your marathon, in your 12-week marathon plan? When do you, like you mentioned with threshold, you would only start really using that once you've built a base,
Yeah.
later
I mean,
on.
I think this
When
is the
would you put this
same.
in?
I would be doing the same sort of thing. So for me, I would use a lot of these lighter tempo sessions in marathon to ultra
Okay.
marathon training, just because, I mean, it's still the threshold run still has a place in marathon training, as you were saying.
Yes, yes,
But I
yes.
think these are more beneficial, and especially if you're maybe new to marathons and you've maybe leveled up to that distance now.
Mm,
And certainly I noticed that the track is that I've started, a lot of new people have come along, and so they're not used to doing these marathon pace miles. What they often do is they go out for their long run and they want to do their long run at marathon pace. And I'm like,
mm,
no, 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 no. So for
mm.
me, the perfect time to do these is the day before or 2 days before your long run. So I quite like to almost back to back them. So I like the light tempo sessions to be quite light and to be very controlled, and then to do the long run the day
The long
after.
run. And how long would you make those sessions? Like you say, the day before long run. What would you normally? How long would that be? If we're
Not very
saying
long at all.
don't do your long run at tempo, what would you recommend?
Yeah. So for me, I would do, like I sort of said, 2 by 16 minutes or 2 by
Okay.
15 minutes,
Mm,
or 4 by 8 minutes is another really good one. 4 by 8 minutes with 2 minutes easy jogging. So it doesn't seem that much on paper, and the pace difference isn't, well, it should be a wee bit of a difference from your easy
mm.
pace,
Yes, yes, yes.
but it's still a pace that you can chat quite comfortably, because if you think you're going into a, especially if you're doing marathons and ultras, those paces are gonna be slightly slower, so you should be able to chat, and it's about dialing into those paces so you just know them really, really well. So when you get to the marathon, you don't start too fast because you know your pace, and that's what you do. But because we break it up, so it's not a 40 minutes. I mean, you can, when you get, I always have one big weekend for my athletes, especially if
Mm,
they're just a little bit more conditioned and
mm.
experienced, where they do a much more continuous light tempo, and that can be almost up to 60 minutes, even 75 minutes, but that's depending on their level of experience. But
Okay.
I think 40, 30 to 40 minutes is probably more than enough. And if you break it up, then the cost to your body is less. Then you're
Mm.
good to go for your recovery, for your long run the next day as well. So I quite like to back them. For myself, I have been training for Valencia Marathon, as we know, and I'm not quite as well trained and conditioned. So I tend to do my light tempo on a Friday and then my long run on a Sunday. So I have a wee day's recovery in between.
Yep.
So, everyone's different. Everyone responds differently. And so you've got to work with where you are at, where your fitness level is at. But for example, we did 4 times 8 minutes the other week, whereas I knew I wasn't as fit. So I did 3 times 8 minutes because I knew it wasn't so good for me, and then had a rest day and then did my long run. So
Okay.
it really depends where the athlete is as to how you would program those in. But
Yeah.
I mean, do you use those? What's your sort of feel with
Yeah, I
them?
mean, to be fair, I haven't used tempos a lot in this block anyways. And I do think it's something, that I definitely could benefit from. But I think that's such a key point of what you're saying is look, different coaches are going to respond or use these terms, as you mentioned, interchangeably. So just be aware of that. But
Mhm.
as the spectrum almost goes, your tempo runs are slightly easier than your threshold, but obviously not as easy as your easy run. So I think just have that, because as an example, I use steady state, and I think you and I perhaps differ on that terminology. But I think the key thing is, just as you mentioned, is that for people listening here, is to understand your body and how you recover with these things and with these sessions. Exactly like you say, you're having a break in between, and really that's these sessions aren't there to make you feel absolutely shattered. Okay, so
Mm.
that's quite a key excuse me, that's quite a key point, is to know that, you've spoken around like the 4 minutes at threshold pace, or perhaps your 6 minutes at tempo pace, or marathon pace, but they're not there to make you feel broken afterwards. It's really about, and you've used the word control a few times here,
Right.
and so yeah, I don't want people to go into it and do the back to back, or the Friday rest, Saturday run, Sunday as an example. Again, it must be comfortably hard. You mustn't feel absolutely broken after these sessions. You must feel they'll work you, but you shouldn't feel absolutely shattered. And I just think that that's a quite a key aspect around, the cost to your body. They do have a big cost on your body, but it's around getting the most effective minimal dose, right? I mean, if you listen to our podcast with Dr. Nicky Key recently, she spoke around hormonal therapy, and how they don't just give females all the hormones, like just throw them on there, because that's going to put your body in haywire. And it's the same thing here. Start with these things with a little minimal dose. Let's see what the
Yeah.
change is from there. And I know, Nikki, if you wouldn't mind, just you've spoken to me about it before, and you coach these university student boys, right? So very different physiology and the rest to the females that we're working with. But you've spoken to me about how you've given them similar sort of I would say quantity of these threshold or tempo
Yeah. Yeah.
sessions, as we do for our over 45s or over 50s, and
Yeah.
they've responded really well to it, right? So it's around just
Yeah.
that little bit of a dose without hurting you or without injuring you, right?
Yeah. I mean, as such, I have quite a lot of guys that I coach in their 20s who are, you know, good. They provide good performances. They're fast, and I've done the same philosophy throughout. I mean, with everybody, and I know they would like to train as the contemporaries who train really hard and do a lot of fast work, and I've held them back, and then I do push them forward every now and then, but
Mm,
most of the time. And what I really notice is that they really jump forward with these workouts, if
mm,
done really controlled and really measured, and they've really learnt that. And I think that is the key, is just really learning that. But yeah, physiologically, you can really see them adapt quickly. And I think it's the same. I mean, often us older folks kind of go, oh, but you're young, you can do all that. But actually, they benefit and we benefit the same. You just have to know, it might be we need an extra minute's jogging recovery in between, or maybe
yes,
an extra couple, and maybe 3 times 8 rather than 4 times 8 or 5 times
yes.
8. But that's the thing. It's all the sort of same, and you just have to dial into what your needs are at that particular time. Thought it was interesting. So your steady state run, just to loop back to that. So where do you put your steady state run in this whole
So I would almost regard my steady state run as what you were calling your sort of what's the word that you use? I think it was almost like your classic tempo, or so like for me, a steady state you'd be sitting somewhere between 85 to 90% of your threshold, whereas
right?
like tempo for me is maybe just a little bit harder than that. So yeah, and then obviously there's threshold. So in my head, that's just how I separate
Yes.
that. Um, but again, that's why I say I think coaches use the terms interchangeably. To yeah, I think that's just a nice way to, yeah, in my head, I just have it as that. But for you, in terms of steady states, I mean, is that something that's
Yeah, I
slightly
mean,
different, or yeah?
I use that term, or I certainly used to use that term quite a lot and stuff, but now I've just kind of kept with tempo and threshold a little bit more, and so I tend to use sort of easy, kind of the light tempo, or marathon miles or half marathon
Okay.
miles up to threshold. And, I think it depends on the level of experience of the runner often, and where they're
Mm,
at and what they understand of stuff. And I think with the whole ChatGPT, social media, and everything, things have got a little bit, um, oh, I don't know, different folks just use things slightly differently. So,
mm,
um, but I think if you have a good understanding and a good feel of how it feels, because actually
yes,
you can give paces with these things. You can say, right, I want you to run marathon pace at this, but some people maybe aren't locked into that marathon pace that day. What they need to do is do the effort level of it, as well. So it's also a bit of an effort level. So I think if you know your effort levels, you're kind of 6 out of 10, you're 7 out of 10 as
Yes.
well. I think that's really sort of key. I mean, they all sit kind of between the sort of easy running and the
Yes.
interval speed workout. So it's a huge big range that we're looking for. And I think, and it's all developing aerobic endurance and stamina. And it's
Of course.
just really how much of a cost to
Yes.
our body. And we said that before, didn't we? It's about your cost to your body, isn't it, in your training cycle, and then how you're going to feel to complete the rest of the training for the rest of the week. So,
Yes. That's the important bit. Yeah.
yeah. So if you're doing a lot of threshold running, you might, over the course of 2 or 3 weeks, you might find that you start to get much
Mm-hmm.
more tired and fatigued with your long runs
Mm-hmm.
and everything. Whereas if you're doing the lighter tempo work, you might find that the training stimulus is still there, but your cost to your body over the course of 3 or 4 weeks or 12 weeks towards whatever race you're aiming at is going to be less, but actually on race day you'll actually do better. So, it's finding that balance really, isn't it? It's
It's
finding that.
finding the balance, Nikki, 100%. Sorry. It's finding the balance, but it's also around and this is for the coaches, not necessarily for the athletes, but it's finding the reason why you do different sessions. So you spoke around how, we've seen people and coaches and programs and apps and all sorts that do long runs at marathon pace. And for me, you have to understand the physiology of why we want to do different sessions. So we
Mm,
do our easy runs and we do our easy runs easy because you're going to get the same benefit whether you run it at the top end of that zone. So we run them easy so you can recover in time to do your next session because
yep.
we're building aerobic
Mhm.
endurance there. We do our tempos because we do want to go at this almost comfortable or easy, not easy, but comfortably hard, sort of area. We do our threshold runs so that we can really push that threshold, that lactate threshold where
Yep.
we should.
Yep.
And obviously the intervals for the top end kind of speed work, so it drives me mad. And I know but it really drives me mad when people are running their long runs at marathon pace because the long run is there to build this aerobic endurance. We don't want to try to build the aerobic endurance and the threshold and the marathon pace all in one run. The cost you mentioned, we're speaking around cost to your body. The cost to your body in a long run is a lot. I mean, I know, Coach Perry and
Huge.
you and mine and Tutu, we call those quality runs because
Yes.
they are a large cost on your body. Now you're going to do that at a marathon pace. Rather, keep your long runs where they are for the purpose that they are. Do your tempo runs and at marathon pace for that exact reason, because then you're going to recover from that. You're going to get all the benefits, and then you're going to do your long run. And instead of trying to throw all of it in together, and I think that just comes down to people going, "Oh well, I want to know that I can run for long at my marathon pace." But by building the blocks, think of your tempo session as a building block, and then the next time you do it again, there's another building block and another building block. As opposed to just breaking yourself down in your long run. So, sorry,
Yeah, I
that's just
know.
a little a
I
little
know. Well,
rant,
it's
a little
called
rant. Mm,
trusting the process, isn't it?
there we
I
go.
mean, trust
Exactly.
the process. If you have a coach, if you have a plan, that's what the plan's about, is to get you there. And I find it really interesting how folks, like you say, athletes just go, but I just needed to do a 20-mile run at marathon pace. And we're like, you've left your marathon basically in your last
In that
long
training
run.
run. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Yep.
And
Rather save that for race day. Exactly. Why
yeah,
do don't
and
test yourself in those
you
runs.
tell them till you're kind of blue in the face, and you're like,
Mm.
trained a lot of people to do this. Yeah, I mean, do you know, it's a great resource, and so for me, I mean, I would use tempo runs. This particular training block that I'm doing for Valencia, I'm not going to do interval work. I'm just going to have one session a week, and I'm going to do a tempo run. And for me, I think that's enough. I haven't got the best training block behind me, so that's
Mm.
what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do one session a week, and that's me. I think some of the more experienced can add possibly another one in, but I would just do one. I don't know. What do you think, Shona? What are you going to do for yours? I know
No,
you're.
it's a great question, Nikki, and I think I don't want to really talk about mine, but I think it is about finding. You mentioned balance, and it's about finding the balance, and me talking around finding the reason for specific session. So of course, if we were robots and we could do every single session, we would improve really well. But we have to recover, and when we recover is when we get the benefit. So it's around balancing that out. We have to have long runs. We want to have easy runs, and we do want to. I mean, I believe in an 80-20, this polarized principle. Majority of your work is long and easy, and 20% of that is harder. Of which, so then yes, I might, so let's say 4 runs in a week for some of my more experienced runners. Not every week, but in some weeks there will perhaps be 2. Well, there'll be the easy run, the long run, perhaps a tempo run, and perhaps an interval run. But that's not every single week. It would be, especially for my females who are over 45 who are experienced, it will happen, but it won't be every single week that is like that. So it depends really on the ability, the experience of the runner. For myself, it's the same thing as I mentioned. I mean, I've been playing this frisbee stuff, ultimate frisbee, and it's
That
hard.
doesn't sound very tempo. Or
no, it's interval. So that's it's worse than interval because it's max and you're accelerating, and I really like it. So just as a quick side note, I really like it. I read a stat the other day and this is part of the reason why I'm doing it, that most adults never sprint again, like beyond the age of 28 or 29. And I'm not saying that we must, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying especially for our runners that we need to be doing everything at max, but for me it's just been quite nice to have a little bit of fun and acceleration, deceleration. Obviously there's injury risk involved in that, but I'm managing it. But so I'm doing this not every week as well for this is regarding as my interval work, but then yes, I have worked a little bit on some threshold stuff, but I do need to do a little bit more of the tempo, the sort of marathon pace work that you were talking about, and that'll start coming in now in my own personal training for Valencia.
Yeah, I mean, we've still got quite a time till Valencia as such, so there is plenty of time there. What about what's your thoughts with our progression runs, tempo runs?
Oh, that is a
topic for another day.
Very good. No, it's a good question. So really, I love progression runs. For me, they just, because you're starting off easy and you're just gently building up, and you, when I've done them right, you feel like a superhero afterwards, because
they present such a lovely challenge. They're just
it's so, and it's just because and when you fit, they just click, right? You don't even have to think about building or picking up pace, and so yes, but again, for me, it's around a cost to the athletes. So because if an athlete isn't experienced, they will run that too hard inevitably, and then they are sitting more in that harder sort of zone and putting more cost on their body. We have to recover them more. So I really only use my progression runs for my very experienced runners. But yeah, I do love them. I think they just, and again, I come from physiology background, and I say we must, but we also we need to give. We want to do things that are fun. We like running, for a particular reason, and so yes, I will utilize my progression runs to sort of elicit some of these responses.
Yeah. And I think, well, it really depends where you start and where you finish. So if you're finishing at a ridiculously fast pace, then they're going to be way above your threshold, and almost like a 5K effort. But if you can really control your paces. And it's about control, isn't it? And we do harp on about this a lot, control. But if you can control your easy paces at the start, or your steady paces, or then you can really get quite a good training stimulus through that, which will really benefit. So I would say as long as you're controlled, they could be good tempo runs, but often they can be a bit of both. And there's nothing wrong with crossing over the energy systems. Actually, it's sometimes good to do these compound workouts that work both sort of systems and stuff. So that's all cool.
But I think, because, sorry, Nikki, the energy systems, we must stop thinking of them as a light switch. They don't switch on and off. Right. So it's not like we're going from, and I know we speak in those zones a lot, and but they're not like that. And so yes, I agree. It's not bad to sometimes do that, but it's about control again.
We need them. I mean, that's it. So, there's sometimes on track when I'm running some of my interval sessions, I will quite often start with 8 to 10 minutes for a tempo run for the runners, and then we'll have a couple of minutes off, and then we'll go into the intervals, faster sessions if we want to get a little bit of different stimuli going on there. So, they can be mixed in with a lot of things, or they can be done on their own. And again, it depends where you're going what you're aiming at, and what you want really, and who you are as an athlete, what your fitness levels are, and your conditioning. So
Absolutely. I think the other thing that these sessions always, why athletes they look sexy, right? They sound sexy. They sound like they're the sessions that definitely make you faster, and they are. They are the sessions that definitely make you faster, but only if you're getting the other stuff right, and only if you are recovering sufficiently. And so sometimes I really do believe that yeah, stick to the basics. Like, so don't try and overcomplicate this. Obviously, we've gone into a lot of different, like
yes,
5 by 4 minutes here. Stick to the basics. Do your easy runs easy. Do your long runs at the long run pace. Don't do them at these harder marathon paces.
yep,
And then
easy.
pick a session where you pick something, and you try and just get the little stimulus out of it, see how you recover, and pick it up again from there. If you don't have a coach, that's how I would recommend that you do
Yeah.
it. I know it looks sexy, but the basics really are the things that work all the time. We always just come back to these basics. So
Well,
yeah,
definitely. Everyone can benefit from them. Well, look, if you've got a good or a favorite session that you like, pop it in the comments below. If you've got any questions or anything that you'd like to ask about tempo thresholds, again, pop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear your questions, or we'd love to hear what sessions you really enjoy doing. Otherwise, I think that's us covered all the
Yep.
tempo threshold stuff there. So that's us good for today. So till next week.
Yep, we'll see you
Catch
then.
you
Thanks,
later. Cheers,
everyone.
guys. Bye.
Bye.